Hello. During the next 10 days, many a summer school holiday will begin, and that can seemingly coincide with a change to wetter weather. Now, that's kind of true. This year we are going to see some wetter weather, certainly through the rest of this week, especially so on Friday and Saturday. But if you're after some finer weather, well, over the next 4 or 5 days, Sunday is probably your best bet. Next week, however, well, there's a bit of uncertainty, but there are some signs of some hotter weather on the way. But it's not going to be everywhere that sees the hotter weather, only some parts of the UK. We'll have a look at that in just a moment. But first of all, let's deal with the shorter term. And yes, some wetter weather on the way. Some welcome rain across the south where it has been very dry. One area of low pressure bringing a bit of rain on Wednesday and Thursday, but this one in particular, driving in on Friday, is going to provide widespread rain through Friday and into the weekend. And some of that rain could well be on the heavy side too. As I said, welcome rain across England and Wales, where it's been a dry July so far, but not welcome if you're hitting the roads, as many people will be on Friday. There'll be a lot of surface water and a lot of spray around. Spell of rain moves through, and then heavy, thundery downpours develop through Friday afternoon, with the potential for some large hail as an extra hazard on the roads too. Now, that weather system moving in on Friday, as I said, bringing widespread rain, tends to ebb away, but it's still controlling things into Saturday. Saturday is basically then a day of heavy showers breaking out across the UK. But look at this, for Sunday, just a little bump in the isobars. A brief ridge of high pressure settles things down, but looking at the bigger picture, there's more lows to then come in as we go into the early part of next week, and probably bringing some rain even by the end of Sunday into the northwest. But the overall picture for the weekend is heavy showers likely on Saturday. They'll be hit and miss. It won't rain all day, but there could be some big downpours around. No, if you're after a dry and a bright day, Sunday looks like a decent bet, certainly for a large part of the country. Okay, what happens after that into next week? Well, for that, we need to take a look at the bigger picture and take a look at what's going on high up in the atmosphere and the jet stream. Now, this is the position of the jets. Nothing too strong about the jet coming across the Atlantic, driving that weather system in through the weekends. But fast forward just through 36 hours or so, and the jet has shifted. And the UK is no longer on the northern side of it, but by Sunday and Monday, we're on the southern side of the jet, in this ridge, this little amplification of the jet, and that means that high pressure is likely to be close to southern and eastern parts of the UK, but the jet is still driving low pressure systems between the UK and Iceland. So we're setting up this contrast into next week between the northwest and the south and the east. And the closer you are to the low pressure, the more likely you are to have outbreaks of rain. The closer you are to the high pressure, well, the more likely you are for fine, dry and sunny weather. But it's not just about the clouds and the rain, it's also about the winds. Tightly packed isobars close to that low to the northwest promise quite gusty conditions here at times, certainly through the early part of next week. Whereas further south, close to the high, the isobars further apart, the winds will be lighter, but perhaps more importantly here, the direction of those winds going around the high pressure like this, and potentially, therefore, wafting up some warm air, maybe even some hot air coming up from Spain and France once more into next week. As I said at the start, there's a bit of uncertainty about the whole scenario as we go into next week, and the jet stream is playing a bit of a part in that. This is one of the computer scenarios for the middle of next week, the European computer model. This is the jet stream, slightly different look at it from compared to earlier, but basically the jet stream, the stronger winds, the yellows here, still going up to the northwest, bringing low pressure to the northwest of the UK, high pressure over the near continent, and that would allow the heat to build across the south. This is the European model, but other computer models have a slightly different idea. This is the American scenario, where the jet stream is in a similar position, but has a bit more oomph about it and shifting through the UK, bringing a slightly different feel, bringing the low pressure more into the UK and shunting the high and the hot air more across Europe. So this is the scenario, if the American model is correct, looking at the temperature profile across the UK, and the green, yellow colours, temperatures around or below average. But if we go back to that earlier scenario, the European computer model, if that's right, with the jet stream staying to the northwest, well, that could open the door to some hot air, the reds and the purples there moving up across certainly southern parts of the UK. But notice even in this scenario, the northwest always stays with the cooler air. We'll have that big contrast between southeast, where it could be hot, and the northwest, where it's cooler and potentially wetter. Now, this is the more likely scenario at the moment. So this does open the door to some hot weather across the south. But this, again, is just looking at one computer model. That's not always the best way to look at the forecast for the medium to long range. So what we also run is ensemble computer models, where we run the same computer but lots of different times with slightly different starting scenarios. I've shown these before. This is called a meteogram. This one's specific to Reading, and it shows the timeline along the bottom, and particularly focus on the red blobs. That's the likely maximum temperature in Reading as we go into next week. Now, it shows the cooling trend through the latter part of this week, but it also shows the most likely scenarios that these blobs all get above the average line here, so there's a good signal that temperatures will be rising next week across the south. But how much they rise, well, that is the big uncertainty. And notice these blobs get really quite big by the time we get to Wednesday and Thursday next week, with some of the computer scenarios suggesting hot conditions, whereas a few of them also suggesting that temperatures are only just a bit above average. So what I'm showing you here is just that uncertainty as we go into next week about the extent of the heat, how hot will it get, and obviously we have that uncertainty about where we're going to see that cooler air coming in, how much of the northwest will be influenced by the cooler weather and how much of the south and east will be influenced by the hot weather. So at the moment, yes, there is a likelihood that some parts of the UK will see a hot spell next week. The most likely area to see temperatures significantly above average is across the southeast, but there's a lot of uncertainty about the extent and how long it could last. It's not unusual to have this amount of uncertainty for a forecast 7, 8, 9, 10 days away. That's what this 10-day trend is all about. It's not giving details, it's just letting you know what we here at the Met Office, the experts upstairs, are really focusing in for next week, and just that scenario. There is a possibility that some parts could see some hot weather next week. We'll keep up to date with the very latest details day by day, and the best way that you can keep up to date is by following us on social media.